Hey there, everybody. I'm Steve Holton, back to talk to you again about motive8. I haven't quite decided what it is. It's not really a project methodology, but it's a delivery methodology to get teams on target, on time, and executing the final phase of either your business operation or of your project as well. Today, we're going to talk about action cycles, specifically. First of all, where does it fit within the primer with the tools, techniques, and processes, or the TTPs in the framework? What is the activity cycle itself and its specific workflow? And then lastly, what's next going down the road? I did say this was going to be a long one, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm going to try cutting it down short, because in reality, it's only those people who really want to punish themselves with the courses where we go into it in detail. It's not really punishment, but where we go into it in detail, where we're going to be able to have them go pick up the individual pieces. I think for our purposes today, we're just going to do a high-level walkthrough. So once again, I'm Steve Holton, and I'm going to adjust in my chair. There we go. I'm Steve Holton. A little less of a brag sheet than last time, and this is the last time you're going to see this one. So, degree in computer science from Queen's University, various technical qualifications from project management to Scrum Master to Six Sigma. That's process mapping, by the way. You'll see some of that here. Certified information system security professional, all the various letters and things that make the alphabet soup that a consultant needs after his name. I've got 12 years of uniform military service, another 4.5 as a civilian contractor with the Canadian Army. I was an IT director, I've been a CIO, I've been director of operations and so on in various businesses, and then basically an independent consultant since 2000, working various places around the world, United States, Bermuda, Brazil, as well as obviously across Canada, and dealing with a lot of different interesting cultures and industries, anywhere from travel and transportation to the gaming industry to the travel and transportation to insurance to banking and so on, and government, of course, quite a bit of government. And my sidekick, which you may see from time to time, Missy, but the Bachelor of Dog, and she accompanies me when she can, and is there as my obviously my service dog. So let's move on. So our primer, once again, is coming out. I've changed the date, I'm afraid. I think it's more likely to be 30th of March, just because I've got a lot of other activities going on concurrently, which we'll also talk about status reporting in a moment. But probably end of March is what we're really looking at. It's going to be in both an electronic edition, and which I'll be giving away for free, and a low-cost print edition, which you can order from my publisher and get a relatively reasonable rate, I'm hoping. It's going to be in 4 parts. Once again, as we've discussed in the past, general concepts, templates, use cases, and then lastly, the supplemental content, which will be coming out probably in separate books. And supplemental content in the primer is different. That's going to be some processes that are above and beyond the 8 core ones that are in motive8, and there are additional tips and tricks and techniques that might be useful to you. And then there's other courses and books on top of that, which I'll be working on after, assuming that there's still interest in the material. So in the primer framework, and once again, this is the last time you're going to see this slide as well, sort of translating from the military to the civilian side. We have things like battle procedure that gets translated to action cycles, warning orders, which become activity warnings, etc., etc. Some things don't change. Time estimate, for instance, is still a time estimate. Doesn't make sense to change that. There's a few others, though, rapid mission assessment, RMA, and so on. And I think there's some errors in here. This slide I think is up to date, but you'll see elsewhere in the battle procedure where now I'm doing it. Elsewhere in the activity action cycle, where we're still using some of the older terms as the process was evolving. So those are corrections I'll make in the final version of the book, but I'll have to remember that for later. And as I was saying, some of the supplemental techniques or tips that are in here, you'll see are, and I'll just pull out my pen so you can see what I'm pointing at, is supplemental tips or things like problem-solving techniques, minuting, which is separate from actual meeting minutes. Minuting documents, minuting paper is a different process. And this is to make notes that sort of survive with the document for quick items that change, authorities, final decisions made on things, and it's just a technique for annotating an original document so that that information follows it. And then lastly, we'll discuss single sheet implementation instructions. They're very handy if you want to do quick instruction to people that don't require a lot of paper because maybe it's known, there's standard operating procedures, or it's just a simple task, and one sheet instructions can make your life a lot easier. So cleaning that up and keeping everything in the civilian terminology, what we're going to talk about today in terms of tools, techniques, and processes, TTP, is the action cycle and what it is. And this is really the core of everything that drives motive8. Just like in military operations, battle procedure should be what drives everything and makes stuff happen. The other thing as well is you have to appreciate that these cycles interlock. You no sooner finish one cycle that the next cycle locks in. So the end of one leads to the beginning of the next, and onward and onward. Okay, so as I said before, action cycle. We borrowed this, the process itself is borrowed from battle procedure in the military, and it's really one of the core processes for operations, and it applies whether you're talking about a section of 4 to 8 guys, or if you're talking about a division of 10,000 troops. Battle procedure still applies. There might be a few more elements to it, some more complex templates, additional planning, the staff that get involved in the planning activities, the higher up and bigger the teams that you go with, but the heart of it doesn't really change. Now, if you want to get into a good fight in the mess, ask whether there's 14, 15, or 16 steps to battle procedure. I know in the Canadian military it changed regularly, but here I believe it's 15 steps is what we've settled on so far. So motive8 has taken this core process, this battle procedure, and we've renamed it, as I said before, action cycle. And all actions, all events, all initiatives follow this process to varying degrees. Now, the weight and duration of each step may vary depending on circumstances. Do you have enough time for planning? Do you have enough time to do this? Or is it sort of, hey, do this now, and then run? But the consistent application of battle procedure or action cycles when you have the right amount of time ensures that everyone understands the upcoming operation, ensures that people can anticipate requirements that you may have. And that's an important one. Don't underestimate the advantage of having a consistent process and a consistent way of explaining the situation, circumstances, and what you intend to do and what you will do when you find the issue, your implementation instruction, and how it affects the team's ability to help anticipate what you need and what they'll need as well going forward if they're subordinate commanders. And speaking of which, it also allows, by consistent application of the process, subordinate leaders to initiate their own planning based upon what they understand of the mission and what you intend for them. What's critical here, of course, is that they have to have a certain amount of time as well. So if you're leading teams, if you're leading other leaders, you have to make sure that your action cycle includes time for them to do their planning as well. And what will happen is that in such cases, usually we use a 1/3, 2/3 rule, where 1/3 of the time you've been allocated, say 3 days, is for you to use, so you use an entire day, and the other 2/3, 2 days, would be allocated to your subordinate commanders all the way down through the chain of command, and they would use that as their time to conduct their action cycle and or their battle procedure if we're talking in a military context, and we'll look at that later on as well. So there's 3 types of action cycles that we've incorporated into motive8. The first one is the deliberate or standard, where you have enough time to execute the full action cycle. It's the conventional case, or the idealized conventional use case. Then there's the expedited action cycle, where the team is rushed. They have to consider shortening or eliminating parts of their action cycle, so they're using a fast track plan. Now, what fast tracks a plan for one commander is not going to be the fast track for the next team leader either. It's going to vary on experience, not just his own, but the experience of the team. It's going to vary on how well they know the circumstances or the location that they're going to, the equipment they're dealing with. There could be a lot of factors that affect what the choices are for one team leader to expedite versus another. So we just give very general guidance of the kind of things that you want to consider eliminating and at what risk. So that's itemized as well. And then lastly is the solo action cycle. This is one where you're operating independent of a higher authority or circumstances that would apply motive8. So, maybe you're just using it within your particular division of the company or your particular team, or even if you're just operating completely independently, like you're taking the family on a vacation and you want to use these steps just to help you make sure you haven't missed anything in your plans for your camping trip. We talk about that actually in a use case. Not that I really advocate using motive8 for your camping trips, but hey, maybe it'll help as far as time estimates and a few other things. But in any case, in the solo action cycle where you're not receiving orders and you're not receiving an activity warning or anything else, and you're not reporting back, you're operating independently. And once again, the steps change a little bit. I mean, you could probably anticipate them, but all the same, this gives you a little bit of a guidance just to help with that in those situations, because certainly as this methodology grows in the early days, there's going to be a lot of organizations that maybe elements of them want to adopt it, but other elements either won't or can't. And once again, the solo action cycle is there as a guide to how you operate in such circumstances. So please forgive this slide. It is a nasty, nasty thing, but this is the deliberate action cycle in detail. So what we have here is, the planning phase, the preparation phase, execution, and then finally evaluation. So the planning phase starts off, and once again, I'm just going to go over this quickly. I don't expect you to necessarily retain it, but there will be little aid memoirs in the book that you can take with you to make it easier. But there's, you receive an activity warning, and I've highlighted the key components in each of these. Not highlighted, but made them bold. So you receive an activity warning from management or operations saying you will do this, or be prepared to do this, is what it really is saying. We'll talk about activity warnings in the next presentation. You do a quick mission assessment and an initial time estimate. I believe those are the wrong terms. I believe we've updated them since to rapid mission assessment. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Then what you would do is issue an activity warning to your own team. This is important because if it looks like you're going away for, in 2 weekends from now to do an activity, one of the principles of war, and it should be a principle or pillar of business, is surprise. Now, surprise is great for surprising the bad guys. Surprise is great for surprising your competitors. Surprise is lousy when you surprise your own troops. And that's why you issue a warning order as quickly as possible, or an activity warning as quickly as possible, to make sure people can adjust family plans, or come back to you and say, no, I can't do it this weekend. It has to be the following weekend. Getting that kind of feedback is going to be important. Those are the kind of things that you canvass in the activity warning. Then your planning starts. Now, what do you do with your planning to start your planning? Well, you look at your time estimate. In all likelihood, you're going to receive your implementation instruction relatively soon. If you have not, you do the best you can with the information you have. There are other steps that you can follow, such as doing reconnaissance earlier on than down here. You can move it up. But once again, in the conventional model, you start your planning, you receive your implementation instruction from your higher authority, you do a detailed mission and task analysis. Then what you do is you revise or make detailed time estimates if you haven't got them. Prepare a site survey or reconnaissance plan if required. And once again, depending on the type of job, I've used them a lot. Doing reconnaissance, going into airports, replacing some equipment. It's nice to know if my new equipment's going to fit, if there's enough cabling, if my cabling can go through the conduit. So reconnaissance is warranted there. If I'm going to be doing construction on a construction site, once again, is the site safe? Is it flooded? Is there power? Reconnaissance can help you with that. So it's nice to make a site survey and reconnaissance plan. And I can keep giving you, one example after another. You're doing a wedding plan. And once again, you maybe want to go check out the different banquet halls, taste the food, see how the staff are, and do they conduct themselves appropriately. Just another type of reconnaissance. So generally speaking, it's a very valuable activity and you want to do it. This, unfortunately, is also one of the first ones that gets cut in an expedited cycle. Now, if you know the facility, you know the location, you're familiar with the airport where you're running your cabling, maybe you can afford to. Or you can use other techniques. Send one of your people. Or maybe you have someone on the ground already that they can get you information. Take pictures, send them back. So there's lots of options that you can do, and we'll talk about that in the expedited cycle. Then what you do is you actually conduct your site survey or reconnaissance. And once again, you have a plan where you say, look for the following things, verify the following assumptions. Here's some extra information. Maybe I want to know where I can find a good coffee during the time I'm there. That may not be a high priority task, but at 2, 3 a.m., it could be an important one. So once again, you put it in there, and if time permits, you'd look for that. You do that. Then you complete your planning. In other words, you bring it all together to say, okay, I've got all this information. Now I take these bits of information and build a plan from it. Then what you would do is you would adjust and issue a revised activity warning if required, based upon the fact that now that you've done this detailed work and you've actually done some looks at the site, as you're working on your plan, you can turn around and realize, wow, I told the boys to get 10 set of snowshoes because we're going to be working cross country. And I realized, no, I'm bringing 2 more people, so I need 2 more sets of snowshoes. So you issue that in the revised activity warning. You might say, no, we're going to stay out 3 days instead of just 2. Another piece of information that they need. There's special tools that you need that you didn't order the first time. So you have to tell your second in command to get a test, get 2 test kits for electrical work, or to bring an extra laptop that we're going to use as a workstation for logging into various equipment that's on site. There's lots of different reasons why you might need to issue a revised activity warning and why you would need to make additional requests. Then what you would do is, once you've got people, once again, working, right, as much concurrent activity as possible, don't drop the ball, keep them busy. And likewise, if they don't have something to do, they're either resting or they're anticipating, they're either resting, they're cross-training each other, because once again, you don't want there just to be one person who knows how to update a certain server, or one person who knows how to run a certain type of cabling. What you want to do is, cross-train as well. And then lastly, anticipate what other needs there may be there. By the time you've completed your planning, you've issued your revised activity warning, then what's going to happen is that you issue your implementation instruction, or in the military would say your operations order. We don't call them orders in motive8 for reasons that we'll talk about another time. But basically, you're giving people your implementation instruction and a mission brief that says, okay, this is what we're doing and how. Answer the 5 W's plus the H, right? Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Not necessarily in that order, but and then they go forward. Then there's the preparation stage. There's already been preparation that started as soon as you issued your activity warning, because what should happen is your second in command is shaking out the team and getting people actively involved in the preparations, whatever preparations they can do. If they're painting, you're painting a house, they're getting the paintbrushes ready, they're cleaning them if necessary, getting the pans ready, ordering paint if they know what type they need, things like that. So they've already done a certain amount of preparations, but the detailed preparations and the ones that are specific to your actual plan, your implementation instruction, is what's being done here. Once that's done, you've made sure everyone is ready. They've done practicing and rehearsals if it's appropriate. Don't underestimate the value of rehearsals. They really can make the difference in difficult situations. And then what you want to do is go to your execution stage, where you execute the activity. You execute your plan, execute your instruction or your orders, and make the team have the team deliver on what it is you need to do. And then finally, when everything is done, you've counted all the people, made sure you've got them, counted all the valuable assets like the tools and vehicles and things. You're all back home safe, and people are making their way home. And you know something? One dangerous point of the return trip isn't necessarily you're coming back from the activity successfully. Usually everyone cheers and, you grab a coffee on the way and grab some donuts and they go to the office. We drop off the equipment, drop off the keys, come in late tomorrow morning, come in around lunchtime and we'll finish everything off. Everyone else just go home. It's that home trip that can be bad. And, you have people going home after long hours, long activities, long planning. Taxi chats are a good idea, or making sure that they reach back to you and say, hey, I'm not that well rested. Can someone give me a lift? Or alternatively, have a spouse or a family member pick them up. So just remember that safety applies not just on site, not just in your preparations, but even afterwards, after you've closed down the site and the activity, that you might still have safety issues with people going home. And I can think of a few examples where people have fallen asleep at the wheel after a long late night activity, and you can imagine the results. So, and finally, within a day or two, complete the lessons learned or post-implementation report, post-activity report, after-action report, all similar names for it, but ultimately lessons learned. What did we do? How did we do it? Was it good or bad? And what did we learn from it? You learn from both mistakes and from new techniques, maybe more from mistakes. But, if something worked really well, log it. Say, yeah, this should become a standard operating procedure. If something didn't work so well, was it the right idea? It just was implemented wrong, or was there something wrong with our assumptions when we chose to do it that way? All different ideas that you need to bring about and assess in the lessons learned. And you're going to see this decomposition technique used, where you would say, okay, we left at 10 a.m. So what? Well, it was far too early since it was a night activity. So what? Well, we could have gotten more sleep if we had actually left later in the day, like around 4 p.m. as opposed to 10 a.m. Oh, okay, so what? Better time appreciations. Using this technique to rip apart as much valuable information as you can from a single observation. And ultimately, you gather together a summary of those observations and make conclusions. But lessons learned processes for another day. So you poor devils, I'm going to show you the workflow. And this is what's called a swim lane diagram. What we have in here, and really, I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. especially since most of you probably can't see it. I do have some better slides in the follow, but the detailed dissection of this is saved for the courses. What we have here, though, is the swim lane diagram that walks you through. Each lane represents a different group or authority. So, for instance, our team leader is in here, the second in command is in here, and then the actual team members, and so on and so on. And you could see, the various attachments and stuff, attached members, and you could say, okay, it starts, there's a start bubble, and it has an activity warning. It gets given to the team leader, who then in turn decides what he's going to do, and it gets passed down. And of course, with this kind of diagram, what we also have is there's numbers for the major steps, show you the proper sequence, although it should be fairly clear from the arrows. And with each one of these numbers would be perhaps a procedure or process checklist that would tell you what you have to do in order to do this. It could lead to a template. It could lead to a number of different things. But anyways, in any case, this is the way you would read this diagram. The primary result that you're looking for is emboldened. So you could say, okay, this is where we execute the activity. So all these steps lead up and push into that. This is an unusual diagram in that almost everything falls upon our team leader. That's the nature of small party tasks and planning. In larger organizations, as I said, in larger organizations, there might be more staff, in other words, more swim lanes, and they might take off various chunks of this and run it for the leader of the mission. But predominantly, it's an exercise. It's done linearly with just input from the guys. And when I say guys, I really mean from the various teams that support the commander. Okay, so let's look at this in a little more detail, shall we? Okay, so still not really exactly pretty. Let me try and reorient myself here a little better with the camera. Sorry about that. Still not exactly pretty, but a little bit easier to read. I've split the original swim lane diagram in half. So this is the first half here. We've got our start bubble from management. They've prepared their activity warning. They're giving it over to our leader or commander if we're talking about the military, but to our leader. And then they in turn do we say quick mission assessment here. I believe it's supposed to be rapid mission assessment in the book, but we'll get all that corrected and sorted out, terminology for us in the beginning. And then once he's done his initial assessment, initial time appreciations or time estimates, then what he will do, and the time estimates are to really make certain that does he have enough time to actually complete this workflow, or does he need to switch to an expedited cycle? Does he have enough time to actually achieve the mission, or does he need to go back and say, no, I need a couple more days to paint this house because it takes 2 days per room instead of one? There's a number of scenarios where the time appreciation is very important and will lead to having to go back to management maybe. But assuming that everything is okay, they prepare and release their own activity warning based upon what they've been told so far. And once again, the idea is to surprise your adversaries, but never surprise your own people. So make sure that they know that we've got an activity coming up and that they need to prepare for it. And then that would in turn allow your second in command to initiate team and administrative preparations. So you'd start getting people ready for you while you carry on with your planning. From there, you receive your order from your management or operations team, your implementation instruction from them, and then you would take that and you would do your detailed mission analysis, and then you would revise and make a more detailed time estimate going forward. Then we jump to the next page. So I'll meet you on the other side. So, whoops, wrong slide. We were supposed to jump forward. My mistake. Let's fix that later. So before we jump ahead to the next slide, just in case some of you wanted to see these process steps 6 and 7, here's the narrative that goes with them in case you're pausing the video to read those. They're better outlined in the book, to be honest. These are just short summary steps. But anyways, we'll move ahead to the next one. Okay, so welcome to page 2 of our action cycle. So we've coming in here, being continued across with our leader, and what's happening is they plan and execute the site survey. They may have some members join him from either the teams or the attached support. Once again, could be that you want to look at the site and you want to determine is the electrical panel okay. It could be that you need a specialist to look at the ground and determine if certain vehicles can pass over it, or if you need additional drainage, or that you require a specialist to look at the server and the cabling and determine if it's still up to spec and capable of handling the network traffic you intend to put through. There's lots of different reasons why you might need a specialist to come with you, and you could draw them from the team as well. So something to incorporate into your plan. Once you've completed your plan for your survey plan, then you actually go out and you conduct that survey. And once again, you have a series of questions you need answered. Some of them are simply verify that X, Y, and Z are here. Other ones are assumptions. You assume there's enough power. You assume that there's water on site, and you have to turn the taps and make sure that's the case. And if not, maybe have some sort of emergency plan to try and deal with those situations. So that's for your survey and reconnaissance. Then once you've got that information, you brought it back, you can complete your planning, adjust and issue a revised activity warning based upon your planning, because you suddenly realize you need extra equipment or changes in equipment or changes in staffing. And then you prepare and release your implementation instruction that actually tells people exactly what you want done with your plan. And then once that's done, you coordinate team activities and preparations, and then lead into the actual execution. Once the execution is done, and execution is done with various team members and attachments, of course, and then they all participate in the lessons learned afterwards, where you gather the facts from what you saw, and then chart out what was good, what was bad, what lessons did you learn from that you can apply on subsequent activities within your company or organization or industry. And that ends the action cycle. Also, you might want to have your senior management participate in the lessons learned review. One, for them to hear what you guys went through to achieve their mission that they assigned you. But two, they themselves might have observations, like they kicked you out of bed at 3 a.m. to pass on your activity warning, and really it wasn't worth it. They should have just waited until a regular workday because they had the time available to them to do it. It's a silly example, but it's certainly one that would make you say, oh yeah, wait a minute, we didn't have to rush into this. So there were other options. And then ultimately, once again, it all stops. So once again, nothing new, same slide as before, just a different area that's highlighted because we've got the steps, 11 through 15 that I just walked through, in case you want to actually read them and see for yourself what's there. But once again, the material is probably better read in the book once it's released. This section's actually done, believe it or not, but maybe I can get an early release of it as a PDF and put it on the site for you a little bit later once we get our website running a little more smoothly. Okay, so that pretty much covers the action cycle. I mean, there's a lot of detail that's in there that we'll cover individually, but the action cycle itself is largely covered as far as a high-level macro view, and you'll have a little aid memoir, like I say, that you can carry around that should help you with keeping track of the steps. So now, where do we go from here? Well, let's see. Okay, so as I said, we've done the action cycle. That's why that's highlighted green. Now we're going to talk about, in our next presentation, the activity warning and time estimates. The two of them are fairly short. We could put the two together without too much difficulty. I don't think I'd want to tackle any element of the appreciation or estimate without having these completely done. So we'll come back for that. And some of these other ones, of course, are also well on their way to being finished, just not in a presentation. Some of them will wait as well. They're not going to be done in these little PowerPoint videos, but instead will probably be a subject of a formal training in our learning management system. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later. And that's it, my friends. We are done for this particular update on the action cycle. We'll have another presentation in a couple of weeks. Just as far as some updates for you, the motive8 phone number hasn't changed. The email address is no longer motive8process@gmail.com. Although we are monitoring it, we're getting rid of that. We're switching away from our interim email to the one that's associated with our new domain name. I couldn't get motive8.com because someone's squatting on it. We can deal with him later, but right now I didn't want to risk him ransoming it to me. So we're using info@motive8now.online. And I can brand that. I can sell that. So this is our online repository for content, courses, other materials, questions, and it all ties into the motive8 plan, which when you're ready to finally execute it, now. Do it now. The website and learning management system are installed and undergoing development. And of course on Facebook, we now have a formal name for our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/motive8now. So that was kind of cool. That's where we're at.